Welcome to Raving Ryan. I'm your host, Ryan Anastasio. Today, I have a very special guest, candidate for US Senate in 2018, Dominic Rapini. Mr. Rapini, how are you?
Ryan, I'm doing great. This is great to be here.
You grew up in Hamden, Connecticut, and then went on to Trinity College and studied neuroscience. I understand you worked as an EMT in Hartford in college, and then in 1986 you started working at Apple, where you're currently working. Can you tell us a little bit more about your life and your career?
Yeah, so in 86, I actually joined the personal computer industry, not as an Apple employee, but as somebody selling Apple products and computer products. Yeah. Selling at a time when no one really knew how to sell that stuff. So it was a great time. And working retail, and I specialized in what was called desktop publishing. And I would work with ad agencies and print shops and large corporations to help, go use a Macintosh to start, doing their printing and their typography. And that was a great time. And I managed stores, and during that time I managed the Apple business for that entire chain. And then from there I went on to, in the 90s I had my own business. I did medical imaging on a Mac. I hooked up Macintoshes to microscopes and imaging equipment. And then I joined Microtech International in 1995, and I was the vice president of sales and marketing, helping develop products for the computer industry. And I joined Apple in 97 when all my friends told me I was nuts, right? Because Apple was really on the verge of insolvency, and probably had 90 days of cash as a $4 billion company. But Steve Jobs had just returned, and my instincts told me that, this is something I think I should do. And I've been doing that ever since. And this whole entire time I've coached football. I coached Pop Warner football for all this time when I worked with young kids, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 years old, as young as 5 and as old as 14. And that's been a great passion of mine because I love playing football and I love coaching football. And it's really embedded me in the community. Through New Haven, Bridgeport, Hartford, Hamden, wherever I've coached that whole time. It's really been an important part of my DNA.
Yeah, and you were at Apple, like you said, when it was on the road to bankruptcy. And now Apple is one of the biggest companies in the entire world. What is it like now, different like now than it was before? Now that Apple is such a huge company,
it's not any different. It's because the entire time I've been in Silicon Valley, I've had the privilege of working with really smart people, and we're very hungry. And that means we're as hungry in '97 as we were today, which means we want to succeed, we want to be the best. We compete every single day. And it has, that's in entrepreneurial spirit is still there 20 years later.
Yeah, and running for U.S. Senate is not an easy task. Most Senate races cost millions of dollars.
10.5 on average.
And it really takes a toll on the candidate and the family. Can you tell me why you want to be a U.S. Senator and how you plan to be elected?
Yeah, Ryan, that's a great question because, anybody who really embarks on any endeavor needs to know why, right? Why you do anything? Why, Apple's always been a company that everybody knows why, right? Because we want to change the world. And so I've been accumulating a lot of great skill sets in business, great skill sets as a coach and a mentor to young people. And after all this time, I've watched more and more closely what's happening on the state and national level, and saying, this really is something that we can do better. I believe that a business person can add a lot of perspective. I think my skill sets can be used as a negotiator and as a deal maker, and as somebody who understands true diversity. In terms of business solutions, I think I can make a difference, and I can be a great leader for Connecticut. And I love this state, and I believe that Connecticut's worth fighting for. And I think we need people who are willing to fight for Connecticut right now.
You have no prior political experience, and you just have business experience.
Right.
What do you say to people that say that you don't have enough political experience, that you should first seek a lower office?
Yeah, I say, what? First of all, I studied this proposition for 9 months before I jumped into it. I studied it. I tried to learn the culture. I went to a lot of political meetings to try and understand the culture. And what became very apparent to me is 80 or 90% of what it takes to be a good, effective politician really is an overlap with my business skills. So so maybe there's some points of order and some rules and regulations and different procedural things that I'll have to learn. But that's easy. That's the stuff knowing how to negotiate, knowing how to work people and build relationships. Those are the things that you can't coach, right? As we say in football. And I have those qualities.
And you're going to be running against incumbent U.S. Senator Chris Murphy, who is very popular in the state. How are you going to approach the campaign, knowing many of the residents in the state have a favorable opinion of your opponent? Yeah.
So what's very important for my fellow Connecticut citizens to understand is Murphy and Malloy have been together here for 10 years. in the state. And we are probably now at the worst part of our state's history fiscally. And Chris Murphy's had many opportunities to do effective things for us in Washington. He helped us bring us infrastructure dollars, help us bring the money for transportation. We actually ranked 45th in the country in terms of getting actual federal dollars back. And so you combine that with the fact, and you help people understand that while he's at war with the administration, he's isolating Connecticut from money and opportunities that we'd be using to help us meet some of our objectives, like building a manufacturing base, right? Like being an effective partner with what will be a Republican governor in 2018. Yeah. And I think when everybody looks at the all Democratic delegation we have in Washington right now, and they're millionaires, they're activists, they're all lawyers, for God's sakes. I think everyone understands we need a little bit more of a balanced voice, and that will be me. I will have more balance, and Chris Murphy doesn't get that. He's just another one of the 60 lawyers in the Senate.
And like you said, that here in Connecticut, we're not getting a lot of federal dollars back. We see a lot of both U.S. senators here in Connecticut, both Senator Murphy and Blumenthal, are continuously going after the Trump administration. We see them going on TV all the time and bashing the president a lot. And there's a lot of other senators that do it more of like a way that they disagree with the president, but they don't continuously go after him and go on TV. Do you think that's one of the reasons we're not getting federal dollars back?
Well, it's you look at Senator Murphy's ranking in the Senate, right, for getting bipartisan support. He ranks 96 out of 100 senators. Yeah. So obviously he's not playing well with others, right? And obviously, going at war with the administration instead of trying to find points of commonality is really taking a toll on his ability to be effective. And certainly the proof is in the pudding when you look at the money that we're getting back from D.C. So if you're in the administration, do you want to work with a guy who's declared war on you? No, you can't do that, right? You just can't do it.
And current approval ratings at Congress are at an all-time low. A recent Quinnipiac University poll showed that only 15% of Americans approve of what Congress is currently doing. Right now, Congress is not able to get anything done. Many Americans are very mad at their Congress members for not fulfilling campaign promises, and they're not getting change done in Washington as they had promised to do. If elected, how are you going to make sure we can get change done in Congress and be able to get things done? Because it's not happening right now.
So we have had about 50 pieces of legislation gone through Congress since January. So there are things getting done, but the high-profile things, the things that really matter, are not happening yet, and not yet. What do I do differently? First of all, I got to lead by example, right? And secondly, I have to look at one of the core problems is partisanship, and I have to be willing to get out there and not tell people what I hate, but tell people what I love and what I believe in. And I think that's going to be very important. And I got to do that, and I got to reach across the aisle. When I get elected, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to ask Senator Blumenthal to come to my home. We're going to make some penny olive vodka. We're going to break some bread, and we're going to start talking about what we can do for Connecticut together, and find the things that we both agree on. And there's probably a lot more than we realize when we start talking. And
do you think things aren't getting done currently because people aren't reaching across the aisle, and we see party line votes happening?
That's exactly what's happening. And here in Connecticut, it was a great microcosm of it. Geez, all it took was 2 or 3 Democrats like Lonnie Reed from Branford to say, you know what, enough's enough. I got to start putting Connecticut before my ideology. And at least we passed a budget, right, for the Senate. Yeah, now Daniel Moy, he vetoed it, yeah. But that's because he's got other priorities that don't include Connecticut. And at the federal level, partisanship is absolutely why we're not breaking out. And this is something that's been building and growing since the hanging chads of the Bush-Gore election. I mean, the partisanship, and it's been amplified by social media, and people are able to anonymously get out there and put their hate out there and say things and add the vitriol.
And Republican members of Congress have promised to repeal Obamacare and put their own health care plan in. Congress has wasted many months trying to pass health care, which they have not been able to do. Right. The recent Graham-Cassidy bill did not even make a vote because some senators had concerns right. over possible Medicaid cuts. If elected, how are you going to approach health care reform? Because it looks like it might not be get done now or even next year. So I think at least everybody agrees that some change is needed to Obamacare. What do you think of that?
We do need change to Obamacare, right? 47% of the counties in the United States, are down to one exchange. I mean, there's a lack of competition. We have people that anecdotally you just see people all over the place that have huge deductibles. They're paying $12,000 a year with an $8,000 deductible. You had 6.5 million people last year actually chose an IRS penalty instead of Obamacare, right? So we know it's not working, and so we know it's not sustainable, right? But we also know there's 30 million people that we got to take care of. I personally love the Graham-Cassidy bill because I love the idea of the states designing their own health plan. I love them take, Indiana and Rhode Island were able to take a fixed amount of Medicaid for a 5-year period, by reducing the number of rules and regulations and give them the flexibility to design their own stuff. And so what do you have in Rhode Island? For example, they took low-income elderly people, instead of sending them to a nursing home at a great expense, they kept them home with the dignity of being at home with home care. And they were able to save money and get a better result. So as I look at my personal design points, I want state control. We can do it with less money because the states can be smarter about it and be more tactical with how they spend the money. We need health savings accounts so the middle class can help reduce their overall cost of health care. And we need large groups of people. We need groups of people to be able to band together and buy more effectively. And we need tort reform, right? Because that's just one way in which we can start reducing the cost of health care. So we need many things, to make it happen. It's not going to be just one bill. It's going to be a succession of ideas that's going to make it work.
And like you just said, that the Graham-Cassidy bill was going to give power back to the states.
Yes.
Some Republican senators, such as Susan Collins, had concerns saying that it would give states the right to cut Medicaid. What do you think of that?
Well, they're going to get a fixed amount of Medicaid, and the governor knows their state. Then they're going to do the right thing. Otherwise, they'll get voted out of office, right? And the governor won't be able to do things without their legislators, being behind them. So it won't be a unilateral decision to happen. They'll do what's best for their state. And I doubt that would include cuts because, we need money to make this healthcare work. We need money for pre-existing conditions. We need money for the heroin epidemics that we're trying to resolve, and we need to make those things happen. So I don't think that would have been a result.
And North Korea is currently a huge threat to the United States.
Right.
They've been testing missiles and have demonstrated they can reach parts of the U.S. and its territories. President Trump has been dealing with North Korea head-on and has said that there could be war if North Korea launches a missile at the U.S. The president has also repeatedly called Kim Jong-un a rocket man on Twitter. Do you agree with the way that President Trump is handling North Korea, and how would you deal with the crisis?
I do agree, and it's very hard for the average American to see all the things that Donald Trump is trying to get done. But what he's doing, he's raising the visibility of the issue. He's bringing it to a head. He's challenging a dictator, a bully, right? And what the most important thing he's doing, he's making China understand what's happening here and that what's at stake. Now, if you know the history of China and Korea, right, and Korea has been a country that's been invaded and occupied by Japanese and Chinese for thousands of years. But one of the core concepts of the current Chinese government is they don't want a democracy on their border. So it is in their best interest to make sure that there's not a free Korea on their border. That's something they will not let happen. In the first Korean War, when we started to cross the Yalu River with the Allied forces, right, pushing back the North Koreans, we had hundreds of thousands of North Koreans with bugles and bayonets coming over. It was that important to them to push us off. But the point of all that is, China is the answer to this, right? And so as China understands, what is at stake, both economically and for their own political motives, they will need to rise to the occasion, and they're being forced to they're going to be forced to do things to fix this, whether it's eliminating that dictator and putting something they can tolerate, or just really forcing ahead economically. I don't think it's going to end up with war. It could, but right now, this is all about getting China to act, and China's motivated.
Yeah, and what has currently been doing is the United Nations has been placing sanctions on North Korea, and it has not been working, and they've been doing it for years.
Yeah.
So do you think placing sanctions on North Korea is working?
Well, you need to place sanctions, you need to ratchet up the sanctions, and then you need to make sure they're enforced, and you got to make sure the Chinese are participants in it. If we do all those things, North Korea is not a rich country. They cannot be sustained without, if we start cutting off their cash flow, access to capital around the world, if their goods all of a sudden can't be sold, it's going to be really hard for them to sustain themselves. So it will affect change, but it has to be a concerted effort.
And one thing a lot of people talk about in Congress is putting term limits in Congress.
Oh, yeah.
You have said that you only serve 2 terms if you're elected.
Yep.
Why do you think we should have term limits in Congress, and why do you plan to serve only for 2 terms?
Yeah, so one of the things I talk about is leading by example. So if I'm going to get out there and talk about term limits, I'm going to lead by example. I'm going to say that right from the beginning, all right? Because I think what has happened, we look at Congress and we look at people who have been here 20, 30 years, right, or longer, right? We just see that they get disconnected from the voters. They become overwhelmed with the process. They become overwhelmed with having to get reelected. And I think at the end of the day, they start to forget why they're there. You know, Chris Murphy's been an elected official his entire life. He's never had a job. He's been 20 years. He's had 4 elected positions. That whole time I've had 1 job in 20 years.
Yeah, and opponents of what you say have argued that you need time to build relationships in Congress, and it's and when you're there for a while, you know how to get things done. We see a lot of senators on both sides, such as John McCain in Congress. Rose DeLauro has been here for a very long time. What do you think of that argument?
Well, something's wrong if you got to be there a long time to figure out how to get things done, right? If you have to be there a long time to be effective, then there's something wrong with the process, right? This is the process that's metaphorically described as the swamp, right? If everybody's on term limits, guess what? We're all on the same clock, right? And if we're all on the same clock, then the process will start to change, and the sense of urgency will be get things done while you're there, and not figure out how you be there forever and ever and ever. So I think that's a false argument.
Yeah, I want to finish up. I know you're a football coach, but do you have any other hobbies?
Yeah, so I love military history, right? I've been studying military history since I was a little kid. My family and I, we love to go snowmobiling up in Vermont, and we ski up Mount Snow, and we do a little bit of boating. Well, I'm not really good at boating. I'm just kind of working on it.
And Connecticut is really well known for its pizza restaurants. Some people call Connecticut pizza heaven.
Yeah.
Do you have a favorite pizza restaurant in the state?
So, in addition to making our own pizza, we have a pizza oven. So because we can't get enough pizza in my family.
Yeah.
The Worcester Street pizzerias are phenomenal. Modern pizza is phenomenal. There are other great pizza places. Most of them in that New Haven area. You know, as you go north, I hate to say it as Hartford and Simpson, because I worked the school up there. The pizza's not getting it done up in the north part of Connecticut. But down here in southern Connecticut, where we have so many great Italian establishments, yeah, it's terrific. I love a Pepe's pie with white clam. That's my go-to pizza.
Mr. Rapini, I'd like to thank you for coming on. Good luck on the campaign trail. Thank you for watching. If you're watching this on YouTube, go to ravingryan.com. Follow me on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, and follow and go to your website.
It's Dominic for Senate.us, and I'm on Twitter at MacDommer.
All right, and thank you for watching. Reporting for Raving Ryan, I'm Ryan Anastasio.